lived in Germany. My parents were in the Army, so I lived in Wiesbaden, Germany. Everything was DODS, Department of Defense, and so I went to a DODS school, and the library was, you know, a basic high school library. They had everything there. And then there was a library, American library on the base that we would go to, and it was, I mean, pretty adequate. I would check out books there and, you know, surf the internet. That was when email was really, really big, and so you go and like check your email on AOL. My mother used to take me to the library all the time when I lived in, my parents were in the Army, so I moved around a lot, but for about 4 years between 3rd grade and 6th grade, I lived in Rockville, Maryland. And every Saturday my mom would take me to the public library, and she would go off and check out books, and then I would go and play in the little kid area, and she would always let me check out books. So it was a family tradition with us for a little while. So when I was in high school, I used, you know, the high school library, and sometimes I would use the public library. And then when I got into college, when I was in college at UT, I used the Hoskins Library quite a lot. So I didn't really come to public libraries then, but once I graduated, I kind of came back. I normally come to the McClung Collection, which is the historic library, which is over at the East Tennessee History Center, and I use city directories, neighborhood, the newspaper clippings. I use the biography files. I use books on the history of Knoxville and neighborhoods and stuff like that. It's mostly a genealogy library, so they have lots of genealogy books and sources there. But then they also have a lot of like local history. So they have a collection of city directories, which are kind of like fancy phone books. And they have lots of newspaper clippings, articles from, you know, turn of the century. They have lots of microfilm with lots of historical information. They have biography files and genealogy files and lots of books, and so it's a great resource and a great library. I just think the library is a great institution. You know, helps people on so many levels, and you know, I think that the great thing about, especially the Lawson McGhee library, is just kind of like the interesting characters that kind of come in, and it's almost like, you know, a TV show. You know, you just want to come in and like just watch everybody around, you know, the building. It's the people, I think. You know, I know a lot of the reference librarians, and they're, you know, really great, and you know, everybody that's kind of on staff there is really helpful and fun to be around. And I also love that every time I go there to do research, I always find something new and exciting about the history of Knoxville, and so that's always fun. So if you've ever read a book called Devil in the White City, it's about the Chicago World's Fair in 1896. And a really interesting part about the book is that Knoxville is mentioned twice in the book in letters that Frederick Law Olmsted wrote to the architect that was designing the World's Fair. And I thought that was really interesting, and so I started doing research on kind of why Olmsted would talk about Knoxville, and it turns out that while he was designing the landscape for the World's Fair, he was also designing Biltmore. He was designing the gardens for Biltmore, and he was traveling back and forth, and so he would travel through Knoxville, and which was an interesting fact. And then I started doing some more research. There's like an Olmsted website that you can go to and do research, and it turns out that Olmsted was in talks with the president during the same time, right around 1896, 97. With his last name was Dabney, and he was talking to Olmsted about creating a master landscape plan for University of Tennessee, but it never happened. And I actually did a little bit of research on the computers at the McClung Collection, and then actually did an interlibrary loan through the Lawson McGhee Library to get the actual letters that were written back and forth to Olmsted and Dabney. So that's kind of interesting, but it never happened. So the resources that you're able to, you know, that I could, you know, find all this information about Frederick Law Olmsted through letters that he wrote more than 100 years ago, and then through an interlibrary loan be able to get the microfilm to look at the, you know, it's just interesting how the whole system works, not only just here in Knoxville, but kind of, countrywide about how you can get these, things. I remember being at UT and writing my undergrad thesis and having to do interlibrary loan through all of these universities, and it was just so interesting that this one particular manuscript that was in, Vermont, in a week I could have it, and I could read it and everything. It's just kind of cool. I don't really think people realize like how much of a system it is and how much, how many people are involved and how cool it is to be able to really get any book you want and read it and not have to pay for it, which is great. My name is Hollie Cook, and I've been living in Knoxville since the summer of 1996. I work at a historic preservation nonprofit called Knox Heritage, and I'm the program assistant researcher. So I research historic buildings and the people that lived in them. I write national registers and research and do online neighborhood tours, and so basically I take addresses in historic neighborhoods and I research them, and then I research the people that lived in the houses, and create stories and tours and interesting stuff like that. So.